and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I am your host, Mystery Red, and this is my disclaimer. This beta reading concrete is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're looking at a piece of original fiction. We are looking at Chapter 10 of The Lake of Haunted Memories by Ladybug88. So I call them Ladybug. And I'm trying to get my cursor to move, and it is not wanting to go up there. Okay, this is what I wanted to do. There we go. All right, so we are on Chapter 10, and we are going to just dive right in here. I have an entire playlist for my reads for Ladybug, so if you want to see any prior chapters, they are all labeled, and you can just go right in there to them, and we're going to get right in here. All right, Chapter 10, Barb. The thrill of adventure fueled Barb as she climbed the ladder-like lattice of roots and stood under the trees staring out at Lake Chevenette. Having waited years for this, she felt like a great explorer, either Lewis or Clark for a day, or Amelia Earhart minus the wings. She scanned the shores but couldn't identify any clear-cut area. Had the place where the logging crews worked 52 and 71 years ago already replenished? Barb couldn't wait to get home and tell Pet. She envisioned the look on his face. Would he congratulate or admonish her before he begged for the littlest detail? She would feed them to him in tiny morsels, like tasty little treats that would leave him wanting more. Certainly he'd doubt her. She took her cell phone out of her pocket and snapped a selfie. Too bad she couldn't post it on Instagram, since she wanted Pet to hear it from her first, or he would act all betrayed and upset. Would he agree to come here with her, just the two of them in a romantic scientific escapade? An occasion to take loads of photos for posterity, something to show their kids in the future and possibly tell her students one day. Once there was a lake everyone believed haunted, and no one was brave enough to visit, let alone sample and study it, and I was the first one in 50 years who dared trek through its tall grass and unusual trees. She would accompany the words of the slideshow of her best moments. Could she gather enough material to write a book, or at least a few chapters of her memoirs? The trees, by the way, were colossal, the tallest Barb had ever seen, and she had sampled dozens of lakes in the state of Wisconsin. She raised her head in awe in where the canopies scraped the sky. Had the trees grown this enormous from lack of human influence, or thanks to some particularity of the local soil? Shiny, the trunks resembled more armor than bark and had suffered no visible impact from the collision. Covered with cone-shaped thorns at irregular intervals, the bark reminded Barb of the tropical sandbox trees she had seen and photographed in Costa Rica on her and Pet's honeymoon. They had only approached a tree after double-checking it had no fruit, since the ripe ones could explode and shoot out seeds like bullets. Barb scanned the branches for fruit, but saw none, even though some sort of fruit had fallen from a tree and splattered the windshield earlier. If this species was related to the sandbox trees, how had they adjusted to the temperate climate? I'm going to pause even though I don't want to. It is reading beautifully, like beautifully. I'm loving it so well. I'm going to just highlight the echo on fruit to point it out. You have it 3 times in one paragraph, which is a little bit much. And then I want to go back and compliment how when she's taking pictures, okay, you're setting this up beautifully, because as she's taking pictures, I'm knowing what I do of Barb's personality at this point. And then seeing her snapping selfies and just thinking of how successful she's going to be. And I'm terrified for this woman. I'm worried about her. I'm thinking, are they going to, someone somewhere is going to find some bloody, mangled, splattered phone with these tragic pictures of this woman who has been destroyed by this forest. It hasn't happened yet, but I've just got this whole, it's not like I don't know, I want to call it foreshadowing, but at the same time, you're not really foreshadowing. I mean, maybe, kind of, because you've got that, if you've watched a horror movie or any kind of suspense thing, then you kind of get that same sensation. Everything's all happy and they're going to turn out all great, and, and then something terrible and tragic happens. Okay. All right. So I'm enjoying this. We're going to get back to work. Yet the leaves showed no hint of the heart shape of sandbox trees, but were three nearly triangular, leathery dark segments joined by palmate veins that acted like the spokes of an umbrella. Astonishingly, all the trees had the same type of leaf, the same shape and color, and even their sizes varied little. The lack of variation was extraordinary, since nothing in nature was this uniform. In addition, the leaves fit no typical morphological classification, with the truncate shape being the closest. A hastate shape would have fit better, but the petiole attached on the opposite side, making it implausible. Would it be made it implausible? Making it implausible? I'm not sure. I'm not going to note it. Maybe I'm just going to verbally ponder that I wondered if should be made. I'm going to reread the sentence really quick. The lack of variation was extraordinary, since nothing in nature was this uniform. In addition, the leaves fit no typical morphological classification, with the truncate shape being the closest. A hastate shape would have fit better, but the petiole attached on the opposite side made it implausible. So first of all, I tripped over it the second time. Apologies. But I really wanted to get to the part where we heard where we sounded out whether making it or made it sounded better. Since I tripped over the sentence, it still doesn't do it justice. But I still kind of feel like made it implausible is what is. It's not flagging it as a grammatical thing. So maybe it's a choice thing. I don't know. I want to admire this lovely. Your visuals are fantastic too. I love how you're describing things like the spokes of an umbrella. Yet the leaves showed no hint of the heart shape of sandbox trees, but were three nearly triangular, leathery dark segments joined by palmate leaves that acted like the spokes of an umbrella. It's great. It's great. I'm enjoying it. Some of our sentences are a little bit long here and there. I guess if we look and we said if we had more than, we've got like 4 commas in this one, and you've got like, what is it, a semicolon? 1, 2, nope, that's a separate sentence. Okay, let's go down here. Let's be correct. All right. Let's see, we've got 1, a semicolon, 2, and 3. So you got, it's a little bit long. You've got a couple of long ones here and there, but they're reading smoothly based on your punctuation. So take it, leave it, noted it. We're going to move on. And that kind of is consistent through the back half of the first half of the chapter that I've already read too, if you kind of scrolled through and looked for the longer sentences. But as long as it's reading well, let's just roll with it, okay? Smiling broadly, Barb plucked the leaf, held it by her face, and snapped another selfie. Are you sure this is the right time for photography? Carl asked. We're going to need pictures for our project. Barb turned and photographed the pickup. And you're going to need them for the insurance claim. I don't think my insurance covers reckless driving under jungle-like conditions. This is our work. There's nothing reckless about it. Uh-huh. Carl lifted the hood. I'm like, okay, gonna reader muse while I kind of like look back here at this photograph and photography kind of echo going on there. You might look at that and think about swapping one out for picture or something, but I think she says, yeah, there's pictures mentioned right here, so you kind of can't really use that, but they're pretty close. I don't know. I'm just going to point it out that I noticed it, and we're going to keep going. But, I mean, Carl is so chill. I mean, isn't this her truck that they have totally wrecked? And she's like, I don't think my insurance is going to cover this. I'd be losing my mind, stressed out. Anyway, we're going to get back into it. Okay. It creaked and groaned so crumpled it resembled painted tinfoil. Exposed, the internal bits looked ugly. How bad is it? Barb asked. Even if the engine and radiator survived, it's the clutch and suspension I'm worried about. The blown-out tire we can change, but the rest... Carl ran the fingers of both hands through her curls and pressed against her scalp. Okay. It took me a second to get the visual on that. Pressed, because I think I wanted the word them, as in her fingertips, against her scalp. I'm gonna reread it again, and we're just gonna roll with it. Even if the engine and radiator survived, it's the clutch and suspension I'm worried about. The blown-out tire we can change, but the rest... Carl ran the fingers of both hands through her curls and pressed against her scalp. The rest is hard to tell. So the tire blew out. Barb had no clue about car mechanics, and all the other terms were foreign to her. To show interest, she examined the front bumper, which had contorted around a tree with absolutely no damage to the spiked trunk. One headlight had shattered. Shards littered the tree roots as they bulged up and outward. Their surface texture resembled dry tar, and their tapering ends enmeshed with those of its neighboring tree. No grass grew near the roots. A sparse transition zone with fewer and shorter grass blades formed between the trees and thick grass. Okay, so what am I doing? I think I'm contemplating a couple of things. Now, it's, like we said, it's reading really well, but I have to acknowledge the things that my brain points out, even if we don't do anything about them, so that my brain permits me to continue reading smoothly. As you can tell, I start to muck it up when I try to ignore what I don't think may not need action. But if I don't acknowledge it, I continue to get worse when I'm reading. So I have to kind of observe it. That is not what I wanted to do there. And so I'm just kind of highlighting them where my brain is pointing them out. And we're not really, basically they're just little, when the words are repetitive, my brain starts to say repetition. And is it too much repetition, too close together? It starts asking all these kind of questions, and then it can spiral and block me from reading smoothly. And so we're just going to humor it by me coloring these little words, and we're going to keep going. Okay. A sparse transition zone with fewer and shorter grass blades. Okay. We're going to try this paragraph again because I don't like that I tripped all over it. And if I trip over it again, I'm going to have to question that. One headlight had shattered. Shards littered the tree roots as they bulged up and outward. Their surface texture resembled dry tar, and their tapering ends enmeshed with those of its neighboring tree. No grass grew near the roots. A sparse transition zone with fewer and shorter grass blades. Okay, I think if we omitted grass here, I might not trip over this sentence. A sparse transition zone with fewer and shorter blades formed between the trees and the thick grass. Okay, so by removing it, I'm going to suggest omitting it because it also eliminates the word echo on grass that happens again at the end of the sentence. I'm going to read it the way it is, and then I'm going to read it the way I'm suggesting it. A sparse transition zone with fewer and shorter grass blades formed between the trees and the thick grass. And I'm suggesting a sparse transition zone with fewer and shorter blades formed between the trees and the thick grass. Very subtle difference. You get to hear it both ways and choose which one you prefer. But it does eliminate the word echo, and I did not trip over it. So I prefer the without it, but we're going to keep going. Barb pocketed her cell phone. She could hardly wait to examine her selfies and take some more with the roots, but figured she had better do it later, not to upset Carl. Well, let's get to work and change the tire then. Sure, but that's really the least of our concerns. Even if we change it, the truck may not run again. Oh, and that's the end of that chapter. Okay, so let's see. I really read well, and I'm excited. I'm ready to keep going. So I'm probably going to end this one pretty quick so I can get on to chapter 11 while I'm on a roll. My brain wanted to spiral further as it started to point out the repetition. Maybe it was just a lot of repetition within one paragraph, and that's why it kind of threw a little fit for me in my mind. But it also started to spiral and make me want to go back and look at how many times we have the word tree. At the same time, the trees are a major player in this story. So you're going to have certain words come up a lot for that reason. Maybe, and it didn't pop out to me when I was reading prior to it. Okay. So I'm questioning, why does my brain point out tree is in this paragraph as well. Okay. It's in here 1, 2, 3 times, 4. Okay. But my brain wasn't like alerting me to it when I was reading it, even though it's in the same paragraph 4 times. I'm not sure why but it alerted me to the word fruit. I don't know if it looks for, my brain is like its own separate entity. It's fantastic. I don't know if it's because of the context. Like, we know we're reading about the trees. Okay, we're getting the visual of the scene. And it didn't stand out to me, and that we were talking, it just did not. But at the same time, when we come to the word fruit, it alerted me that there was too much of it too close together. So you have 3 fruits to 4 trees. What is the difference, really? They had only approached a tree after double checking it had no fruit, since the ripe ones could explode and shoot out seeds like bullets. Barb scanned the branches for fruit, but saw none, even though some of the fruit... Oh, maybe it's because it appears twice in the same sentence. There we go. See how I'm picking apart my own brain and to get to the bottom of why is it doing this. So I would keep the first fruit, and then I would probably omit one of the 2 in this sentence. It could be that I was alerted because it's twice in the same sentence. Barb scanned the branches for fruit but saw none, even though some of the fruit had fallen from a tree and splattered the windshield earlier. I don't even know, because we're talking, the context is fruit in the sentence prior. And so if I was to read this sentence and then continue on, and we used different words like Barb scanned the branches for them but saw none, even though some had fallen from a tree and splattered the windshield earlier. Okay. Barb scanned the branches but saw none, even though some had fallen from the tree and splattered the windshield earlier. So it cuts out some of those extra words from the sentence. I still know the context is that we're talking about the fruit because it's mentioned in the sentence prior. So that's just something to consider. But I wanted to get to the bottom by looking closer as to why my brain was alerting me to fruit and not trees. And I guess it's when we looked closer, it was because it was twice in the same sentence. And photography is just it's a longer word, and when we have longer words, they tend to be noticed when they're in close proximity to one another. One headlight had shattered, shards littered the tree roots. As they bulged up and outward, their surface texture resembled dry tar, and their tapering ends enmeshed with those of the neighboring tree. So again, I think maybe it's alerting me to trees in this case because it happens it's mentioned twice in the same sentence. So that's why. I'm like, why am I suddenly getting alerted to trees when I know that they're mentioned consistently in the paragraphs above, and I didn't get any kind of, my brain did not alert me. And so when I look closer and question that, it is another situation of it appearing twice in the same sentence. Roots are just mentioned in close proximity. Take it for what you will. Keep it, change it. I'm indifferent to that one, but it does explain to me. I wanted to get to the understanding of what was going on in my head. A sparse transition zone with fear. That was again because grass appeared twice in the same sentence. So interesting. Okay, when we look closer, there was actual explanation as to what that was about. All right, this chapter read really well. I'm really enjoying it, and I want to get on to the next chapter. So I'm going to end here, and we're going to go over and start on chapter 11 right now. Guys, I'll see you right now for chapter 11, or I'll see you next time on Mystery Red Reads.